why don't you go ahead and... Hello, my name is Anna Barker, and you can see right behind me, I have my teeny little bust of Napoleon and very large bust of Victor Hugo, or as the French would say, Victor Hugo. And those are our past exploits. Look at this. I still have the biography of Cardinal Richelieu on my desk too. So, and the fairy tales of Charles Perrault. So my whole life is like right here revolving around me. But as you can tell, I'm wearing my spectacular Hungarian jacket and so proud. So I conduct these tutorials online. We've gone through everything from War and Peace to the Red and the Black, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to Paradise Lost. And this fall, we are happily celebrating Hungarian culture and the 200th anniversary of Hungary's greatest 19th century novelist, Jókai Mór. So because Hungary is such an unusual country and in so many ways, linguistically, geographically, culturally, historically, I really felt that I need to do a tutorial Zoom, and at the same time, we'll do the post both novel Zooms. It's a lot easier to talk about French culture and Russian culture because everybody has a great deal of knowledge about them even before starting a French or Russian novel. With Hungarian culture, it's different. And so because I speak Hungarian and because I have a mom who lives in Budapest, I just thought that I will give you a prequel of the saga of the Hungarians. And it will follow very much though my preliminary posts, which I'm posting on Substack on Hungarian culture. So those of you who are unfamiliar and just seeing this for the first time, I write on Substack, and my Substack page is called Anna's Thinking Cap. It's the same title as my monthly column, which is dedicated this year to Iowa's 99 counties, and I live in one of them, Johnson County. But it's fascinating, and in the course of my Zoom PowerPoint, and I'm going to switch to share screen pretty soon. It's just one of those fun facts. Iowa's largest county is named after Lajos Kossuth, who is Hungary's greatest revolutionary. And he has the largest mausoleum in the most important historical cemetery in Budapest. So all of these things just came into confluence in my life. And of course, Iowa City's original name was Napoleon, Iowa. So my affliction for Napoleon also just collided with my geographic location. So, and, you know, Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, that's a totally separate story. So just before I complete my introduction, I spoke only Hungarian to one set of grandparents, to my dad's parents, and only Russian to the other set of grandparents, my mom's parents. And that's why I'm this bilingual person who then learned English, and now I'm hyperventilating about both cultures in English. So that's by way of introduction. So share screen. Let me find my Jókai Mór PowerPoint. I think that's it. And then let me see. I need to move the bar up. Just trying to figure out. Okay, so slideshow and from beginning. All right, so there we go. So that is the big, so can everybody see? Just kind of give me a thumbs up or wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to go through this. I have my watch in front of me, and then hopefully we'll have a few moments for questions. So, and oh my goodness, I forgot my clicker. Just a second. Let me. I'm back. Sorry about this little delay, but things just are so much easier with this clever, extremely clever little device. There we go. Fabulous. So, my desire to share my passion for Hungarian culture actually started in the Kerepesi Cemetery, which is located on Fümei Road in Budapest. And my dad always loved to walk in that cemetery. My mom and dad lived about 3 blocks away, and it was his favorite place to walk. It's surrounded by a very tall fence, and the noise of the city is just sort of remains outside of the tall brick fence of the cemetery. It's quiet, it's lovely. And literally, this was the view that I saw. It's this amazing acacia trees that bloom in July. And you have to understand that, this is what acacia honey is made out of. The smell is intoxicating, and these flowers fall on the ground. And in July, it looks like the entirety of the surface is covered with fragrant yellowish white snow. It's gorgeous. The smell, it's indescribable. And I just thought I need to share this with everyone because this is so intoxicating and so beautiful. And this is the Acacia alley. This was my dad's favorite alley to walk through the cemetery. So when he passed away in 2021, it was just kind of a no-brainer. He gets to stay in his favorite place and be a neighbor of all of those historical figures whose mausoleums he used to show me when we would go for a walk here. And you can see the white snow of the acacia blossoms on the ground. This is a chestnut alley, so the chestnuts bloom in April and May, depending on how warm the winter was. And it's also just an absolutely intoxicating sight. And then this is the chestnut alley on November 1, which is All Saints Day, and I took these pictures. What is remarkable about this cemetery, I'm going to take my Hungarian coat off because it's very hot. So what is remarkable about the cemetery is on November 1, on All Saints Day, people come and light candles on the graves of their relatives, but also in this cemetery, what is so delightful for someone who loves history and loves culture as much as I do, you walk around and people light candles on the graves of painters. This is the grave of Munkachi Mihai. These were not lit by relatives. These were lit by people who appreciate his art. This is the grave of Blaha Luisa. She was an actress. And look at just this abundance of adoration from fans. And she passed away a long time ago. And Adi Endre, he's a wonderful 20th century Hungarian poet. And the tomb of Jókai Mór is right next to him. And this is what Jókai Mór's tomb looked like on November 1 this past year. So it's amazing, absolutely amazing. And you walk through the cemetery, Kossuth Lajos had a ton of candles too. The cemetery houses the mausoleums and graves of politicians, revolutionaries, writers, musicians, composers. Erkel Ferenc, who composed the Hungarian national anthem, is also buried here. It's just sort of a who's who of Hungarian cultural life for the past 200 years. And this is why my dad loved to walk through the cemetery. It's just sort of living history, but dead living history. And introducing me to the world of Hungarian culture was so easy when you walk through the cemetery. Here's this great musician, here's this great composer, here's this great writer, here's this great painter. And so I absorbed all this information, and then I show it to my kids. My first stop when I arrive to Budapest is always the cemetery. I pick up my mom, we go to the cemetery, we say hi to dad, we say hi to all of the great Hungarians, and then we have cake. And I have a picture of the cake at the end of my PowerPoint. This is my dad's crypt at the cemetery. We light candles, and you can see little chestnuts there. When I was a child, when I was walking to school, I was always late because I was collecting chestnuts in the fall. And then I came home from school with my school uniform apron pockets filled with chestnuts. And of course, there's a stunning chestnut tree right next to his crypt. So I always put chestnuts there just to tell him, guess who was here? The kid whose pockets were always busting with chestnuts when I was young. So this is my dad and this is me. Look at the size of my head. It is just an outrage. Can you imagine my poor mother having to deliver me? And so I was the only child, and I just thought it would be fun for you to see a picture of me and my dad. And this is me when I was probably 16 was my dad, just looking dapper as always. And the sakuras, or the Japanese cherries right behind, are next to the school. My dad and I went to the same school, so those are our lovely Japanese cherries. I just need to tell you the story. When they were blooming, the school windows would be open, and every gust of wind would blow these pink petals into the classroom. And it was amazing because the classroom desks and chairs and floor were covered with pink sakura petals or Japanese cherry. And we would have like snowball fights, but we would form our snowballs out of pink flower petals. It was a magical experience. And then those of you who know our middle child, Thomas, who is named after my dad is Tomasz. So my dad is the one in the pink plaid shirt. It's like shocking to us to look at this photo because our middle child, who is named after my dad, looks exactly like my dad in this photo. It's like remarkable. And there he is. So he was a surgeon and he was a history buff. And as you're finding out from my tutorial, he went all the way to Mongolia to figure out where the Huns and the Magyars came from. And he crossed the Volga River. He figured out where the crossing was. And Volga is the largest river in Europe. So it was complicated to cross that river. It's amazing how that river did not stop all of these eastern expansions by all of these tribes that came from Asia into Europe. And also he went to the Veretsky Pass, where the tribes of Arpad crossed in search of their new homeland. So he basically taught me how to do history right. You go to the location and you experience it, because it's amazing how much better you understand things when you are actually on location seeing things with your own eyes. And especially post-COVID days, post-Zoom days, it is so phenomenal to experience history by touching it, because the more real it is, the more you understand it. And I learned that from him. So Hungary, yes, this is the Hungarian flag. And Hungarian children have this wonderful saying, piros, fehér, zöld, ez a magyar föld. Red, white, green, that's the Hungarian land. It rhymes, that's how they remember what the colors of the Hungarian flag are. The Hungarian coat of arms was the Hungarian crown, and it's one of the few countries in Europe that includes an actual Byzantine crown, as in made in the Byzantine Empire, as a part of their coat of arms. And here's the crown itself. The crown has a spectacularly complex history. It has been taken out of the country so many times. Last time, so after World War II, because Soviet Union included Hungary into its sphere of influence after World War II, and Hungary was a part of the Warsaw Pact. Please don't fall off your chairs. The crown was held at Fort Knox until, yes, it was held at Fort Knox. It was held there for safety and protection, and it was President Carter who returned it to the Hungarian nation. So one more of those great deeds that President Carter, who just recently passed away, did. So the Hungarian state crown has been back in Hungary since the presidency of President Carter. And this is where it's held. So if you have never been to Hungary, I strongly recommend that you book your reservations ASAP, because you need to see this building. This is the Great Hall of the Hungarian Parliament, which is the largest building in Hungary. I just find it so charming that the largest building of the nation is the People's House, and that's what they call it. And so the Parliament is this gorgeous new Gothic building that was built a little over 100 years ago. And there are two guardsmen always guarding the state crown, because it's right there in the center of the Parliament. This is a wonderful image of Virgin Mary bequeathing the great crown of Hungary to Saint Stephen, who was the first king of Hungary, and he was the one who converted to Christianity, was a practicing Christian, and made an alliance with Europe to make Hungary a fully European country. And he was descended from Arpad. So we'll talk about all of this soon. This is St. Stephen's Basilica, and just once again, the most spectacular building. The relics of St. Stephen are held here. And the whole square in front is the liveliest place in Budapest. There are cafes, street musicians. Life never ceases to bubble here. And it's wonderful, wonderful to walk all around St. Stephen's Basilica. And then St. Stephen's Basilica is a very short walk from the Parliament building, about, I don't know, 15 minutes to absolutely lovely, lovely, lively Budapest streets and beautiful parks. Um, this is a version of the image that I posted last night when I was encouraging you to join the Zoom. So this is the Széchenyi chain bridge, which was the first permanent bridge across the Danube, constructed in the 19th century. So this is what made the creation of Budapest possible, because from where the photo was taken from the Buda side, and it's a very hilly side. That's where the Buda castle is, and what we're looking at is the Pest side. Pest side is very flat. So this is basically, you're looking at the Great Hungarian Plain that extends all the way to the Carpathian Mountains, those Carpathian Mountains that Arpad and his tribes crossed in order to claim this new homeland. And in the background, you can see the Gresham Palace, which is now the Four Seasons Hotel, a fabulous, fabulous Art Nouveau building, early 20th century art style that's sort of is like, it's called secession style in Hungary because it was a secession from classical, neoclassical architectural motifs. And then in the way background is the St. Stephen's Basilica. So absolutely amazing. And the Széchenyi chain bridge was just remodeled completely. They took it apart, they put it together again. It looks stunning. It's closed for traffic. You can only cross it on bike or walking, and they allow taxis on it, but no traffic because they do not want this to destroy this masterpiece. And then so many things are happening in this photo, and it's just absolutely amazing. So the statue that you are seeing, and of course the statue of St. Stephen, he is so important in Hungarian cultural understanding that his Saints' Day, which is August 20th, is called Alkotmánynap, Foundation Day. And on his Saints' Day, they have fireworks over the Danube and national celebration. So in the Hungarian national psyche, St. Stephen is the founder of the Hungarian European state. This is when they became fully integrated into Europe, and that's where they intend to remain. The church that St. Stephen is facing is the St. Mátyás Church. It's absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. It's now we are standing at the very top of the Buda Castle. And then the fortifications that you see behind him is the Fisherman's Bastions, or the Halászbástya, which were reconstructions, very whimsical, fun reconstructions of the fortifications that have existed here for centuries. And if you go through that arched gate that is right behind the statue, you're going to see the Parliament building and the most breathtaking, spectacular views of the Danube. It's just, you are standing at the very top of the Buda Castle, and it literally takes your breath away. Each time you do it, it's like I never cease to marvel at this, and I can come here every single night during my stays in Budapest, and I just always go like, oh, this is amazing. And so this is my photo. Sometimes my photos are just really remarkably good, and you have to have a very clear night to take a photo this good with a cell phone. But it's I'm standing in the middle of the Margaret Bridge, which connects Buda and Pest sides, and it stops at Margaret Island, which is an island in the middle of the Danube, and it has parks, swimming pools, thermal hotels. It's just absolutely amazing spot. But the crown of Hungary, with its tipped cross, characteristic tipped cross, is right in the middle of that bridge. And it was a full moon night, and you could see the Parliament building just sort of floating over the waters of the Danube. It was spectacular. It took about, I don't know, 200 photos that night. You just could not take a bad photo that night. So this is where Hungary is situated in Europe, and it's a member of United Nations, it's a member of the European Union, it's a member of NATO, but it does not, it did not switch to the euro, so it retained its national currency, and the national currency is called the forint. These are the various regions of Hungary, and you can see Budapest is quite large. So Hungary is a country of about 10 million people, and Budapest is about 1.5 million of the population of Hungary. So definitely the largest city in the country. This is the spread of Hungarians around the world. And you can see that the concentration of Hungarians in the US is quite strong. There are lots of Hungarians in Brazil as well. And then you can see that there are a lot of Hungarians in Germany, UK, France, Ukraine, and also a very large proportion of Hungarians in Romania. So if it was surprising to you to see that the greatest Hungarian king past King Stephen, King Mátyás, that his ancestral castle is in Romania. And I will explain to you why it is so. And this will explain to you also why Jókai Mór's birthplace today is not in Hungary, but in Slovakia. So this is a map of Hungary from, and I actually have, I have show and tell. I'll do show and tell after I'm done with the Zoom. So this is a map of Hungary when it still incorporated large sections of what is today Slovakia, Ukraine, Romania, Serbia, Croatia. So Hungary was, and Slovenia. So Hungary was a lot larger than what it is today. And the Treaty of Trianon, which was the post-World War I treaty conducted at the Trianon Palace near Versailles in Paris, so this is 1920, divided the territory of Hungary and gave some of the territories that belonged to the Hungarian kingdom to its neighbors. So you can see that Slovakia had a large percentage of Hungarians at the onset of Trianon in 1920, but Romania had the largest. And you can see Croatia and Serbia had quite a few Hungarians, but the Romanian population retained a very, the newly formed Romanian state retained a very large percentage of Hungarians. And so thus the city of Cluj, which is now in Romania, but the Vajdahunyad that belonged to the King Mátyás family is now in Romania. And this is you can see the borders of Hungary delineated in black, and you can see where Hungarians live right outside the borders of Hungary. So lots of them between Belgrade and the southern border of Hungary. And you can see the city of Cluj in Romania. That's the city. It's like 2 hours away from the city is the Vajdahunyad, that is the ancestral castle of King Mátyás. And then there are lots of Romanians to the east of Brașov, which is also an amazing city. So our novel and the Revolution of 1848 actually ends in Romania. The Revolution of 1848 was defeated on the territory. The Hungarian Revolution of 1848 was defeated on the territory of what is today Romania. And the biggest battles were between a military leader whose last name was Bem, and he was Polish, and the Russian Imperial Army of Nicholas I. So if you are ready to just embrace the complexities of 19th century European history, this novel is for you. So this is the map of Hungarian speakers immediately outside the borders of Hungary. And this monument was constructed to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Trianon, so you can see the Parliament building ahead. It's very similar to the Vietnam War Memorial. It's this perpetual scar in the soil of Hungary. And every single town that used to be a Hungarian town before Trianon in 1910, the name of every town is inscribed on these bricks on this monument. So I can find all of the towns that I'm associated with, but they ceased to be Hungarian towns in 1920. And this is what it looks like. So very, very similar to the Vietnam War Memorial. And you walk through it. And I've seen people who come to Hungary from Australia, from the US, from Israel, and they come to this wall with paper and crayon, and they finally find the location of the town where they were born and where the ancestors were born, and they rub the inscription of the town on paper and take it with them. It is an unbelievably moving experience. I sobbed the first time I saw this. It was just stunning for me. And it was just opened 4 years ago because it was the 100th anniversary of Trianon. So Hungarian history is complicated, to say the least. And Hungarians feel very strongly about their history. And knowing the entirety of the 1,000 years of Hungarians in Europe is very helpful to understand why they feel so strongly about where they are today. And especially this complex turn that Hungarian history takes in 1526, after the Battle of Mohács, where Hungary becomes a part of Turkey and then does not regain its independence till after World War I, so 1918, so 1526 to 1918, and then at the Trianon Agreement, it loses half of its territory. So right now, Hungary is experiencing the first 35 years of continuous independence since 1526. So just some facts out there. All right. So some more fun pictures of Hungary, and then we are off to, I mean, this is absolutely stunning. So this is Chain Bridge, Parliament, Danube. All right, and we have to go to the Huns. So the Huns, so there were a total of four movements of people from Asia to Hungary in the course of its history. And I will show you where Hungary is situated in the Great Hungarian Plain, right west of the Carpathian Mountains, and you will understand why it was such a inviting location. It was very easily defendable from the east, but not from the south. So this is where the Huns settled. This was still the Roman Empire. So at the time when they settled, the two empires were just beginning to divide into Western Roman Empire, ruled out of Rome, and Eastern Roman Empire, ruled out of Constantinople. And the Huns were not happy to just be settled in the Great Hungarian Plain. They unleashed this terror campaign. Attila and his warriors went all the way to the gates of Constantinople. And it's fascinating that Constantinople enforced their seawall at that time. Attila never made it. He just was contented with rampaging through the Balkans. So never quite made it down all the way to Constantinople, but that wall stood until 1453 when the Turks finally took Constantinople. So that wall stood for another 1,000 years, which is absolutely remarkable as far as fortifications go. And then, he took Trier, he took Reims, he took Cologne. It's stunning. All of these great Roman towns. It's amazing looking. Sometimes it's just fun to look at the map of Europe and see which cities were founded by Romans. And what I forgot to include here is, of course, Aquincum or Budapest, and we can go back here. Budapest was a Roman town. It was started by Romans who were trying to protect their frontier along the Danube and the Rhine. And I mentioned in my commentary that Marcus Aurelius, the father of that dreadful Emperor Commodus, who is one of the characters in Gladiator 1. So now reading that commentary made it like a little more understandable for you why I wrote a review of the film Gladiator, because you were probably wondering, okay, we know Anna likes Russian literature. We know Anna likes French literature. What's this obsession with Roman history? And so Roman history comes from the fact that Budapest was started by Romans, and the name of the town was Aquincum. On my Substack page, you can see the images of the excavation site, which is in the section of Budapest called Óbuda. And you can visit, you can tour, and it's amazing because when Marcus Aurelius was stationed in Aquincum, he wrote parts of his Meditations, which is one of my favorite books. So Romans were here first, and then came the Huns, started invading everyone in Europe. And it's fascinating how this Hun history is connected to Paris acquiring a patron saint. And of course, her name is Genevieve, Saint Genevieve. And if you are ever in Paris, her statue is on this bridge, just frozen in stone in perpetual prayer. And this is the stone that takes you from Ile Saint-Louis to the left bank. So there she is, just praying for the salvation of the city of Paris forever and ever. I love the statue so much. But then the enormous images of Attila the Hun and the patron saint of Paris are in the Pantheon in Paris. It's just, these connections are so stunning. So here is an image of Attila the Hun conquering Eastern France on the way to conquer Paris. And Saint Genevieve, who led the people of Paris in prayer. And the prayer worked. He never invaded Paris. And the citizens of Paris worshipped her because the sacking of Paris did not happen. He was the scourge of God for a reason. He was a terrifying human being. And so to this day, the patron saint of Paris is still Genevieve, and she got her position because of her prayer against Attila. And this is this amazing painting that shows just the sheer wild energy of these nomadic tribes that were invading the Roman Empire, which is stunning. And then, of course, this is a painting by Raphael himself. And you can see Attila just in bewilderment and amazement, almost falling off this dark horse that has the white star on its forehead, and it has a white muzzle. Because Peter and Paul was swords of justice of protecting the city from Attila. And then there's, of course, the Pope, who is asking Attila to pretty please not to sack Rome, and Attila didn't. And historians still trying to figure out why Attila did not sack Paris and why he did not sack Rome, but he did not. So wonderful, wonderful painting. And I love the comparison between the horses of the Pope's guard, which are so just well-mannered, and the horses of the Huns that have this incredible energy that you can hear in Hungarian folk music. And then came the Hungarians, and they were mistakenly called Hungarians because this is the movement of the Magyars. And so it's spelled with a G-Y, but a G that is followed by a Y in Hungarian becomes a D. So it's not Magyar ország, it's Magyar ország. And Hungarians don't call themselves Hungarians, they call themselves Magyarok, and the country is Magyar ország. So the land of the Magyars, and this is their migration, was Árpád. And this is, so the azure blue long spot on this map is Lake Balaton. And you can see how conveniently Hungary is situated in this basin between the mountains that go along the Adriatic coast and the Carpathian Mountains that make this loop around Hungary. So very convenient place to settle, and that is called the Great Hungarian Plain. This is the blood oath of the Magyars. So here are the 7 tribes, and the upright man is Árpád himself, and they are swearing with their own blood to go and find a homeland for themselves, and that homeland becomes today's Hungary. So that's why they're honored on Heroes Square with these incredibly powerfully masculine and very stylized statues of the 7 chiefs, and then the man leading them is Árpád. It's amazing that I know men who are named Árpád in Hungary today. I just talked to a man named Attila on the phone last night. And I actually asked him, are there any men who are still called Koppány? And he said, yes, he knows 2 men whose names are Koppány, and their nickname is Kopi. So all of these historical figures are still very much, though, in vogue as far as naming goes in Hungary. It's fascinating that the horses and the horsemen are facing west. So they're coming from the east and facing west in the sculptural arrangement on Heroes Square. And you can see the entire arrangement, the angel holding the Hungarian crown on top of the pillar, and then the 7 horsemen, and then there are statues of important Hungarians in the colonnades on the 2 sides of the pillar. And Kossuth Lajos is the very last one, so he is a very important Hungarian. But Mátyás, King Mátyás, and King Stephen are of course represented in the colonnade. So this is me. At Vajdahunyadvár, which is about 2 hours, I would say, southwest of Cluj in Romania. It's considered to be the largest castle in Europe, and trust me, I felt it in my knees. There were so many staircases, and I climbed all over the walls. And it's an absolutely, absolutely amazing place. And of course, it was constructed by Hunyadi János, the Turk defeater, who was the father of King Mátyás. So here is Hunyadi János, and I showed you the statue of Hunyadi János by the Buddha Castle. So fun story. In order to drive up to the Buddha Castle, you have to go through a gate and you have to take a ticket, and then you pay on the way down. And the ticket booth is right in front of his statue. So you literally have to slow down, you have to stop, you have to wait for your ticket. And as your ticket is coming out of the machine, you have time to wave to Hunyadi János. And I literally wink at him every time. And I tell him, like, cheer up. You look so incredibly stern. So it's fascinating that our Polish readers said that a Polish king actually fought at the Battle of Varna, which Hunyadi János lost to the Turks. But then his defense of Belgrade, and the Hungarians called the Belgrade, oh gosh, what is the name? It just was in my head. Nándorfehérvár. It was just such an easy word, so much easier than Belgrade. Nándorfehérvár. So he was the defender of Belgrade from the Turks. And the Pope and all of Europe was so terrified of the next invasion, because remember, they remember the Huns, and they remember the Mongols. And so for them, it was just yet another thing to worry about. And so when Hunyadi János managed, the siege itself was followed by all Europeans, and they would ring the church bells of European churches at noon, because that was a call to prayer for all Christians to come to the church to pray for the salvation of Belgrade. And then when, of course, Hunyadi János saved Belgrade that time from that wave of Turkish movement northward, they never gave up on the tradition of ringing church bells at noon. So it's amazing how something that we experience daily, there's a Catholic church in Iowa City called St. Mary's that rings its bells at noon every single day. And it's because of this man and what he did during the first siege of Belgrade by the Turks. And then his son. So this statue won the Grand Prix at the Paris Expo in 1900, and it is spectacular. And there is his second son, Mátyás, who became, his nickname became Mátyás Corvinus. That's why in Budapest, there's Corvin this and Corvin that, and like the big department store is called Corvin, because it comes from the Latin word for raven. And so the coat of arms of his family contained a raven, and he became known as Mátyás Corvinus in Latin. His dad was not a king. He was the leader of the armies of Hungary, Transylvania, and Croatia. But his son was elected to be king. It's a fascinating story. His older brother was killed in this feuding between warring clans. Not a good time to start feuding among yourselves when there is a huge invasion on the way from the south, and it definitely weakened Hungary. So his was sort of the last glorious reign before Hungary loses its independence. And he invited scholars, Renaissance scholars from Italy. It's fascinating. One of the readers commented that the taking of Byzantium by the Turks facilitated the movement of scholars out of the Greek-speaking world into Italy, where they found refuge, which also contributed to the blooming of Italian Renaissance. So definitely another one of those amazing things that happened after the taking of Constantinople by the Turks. And I explain it in great detail in one of my posts, where he becomes king after Istanbul is already, after Constantinople already becomes Istanbul. So 1453, the date when the Turks finally breached that incredible wall that couldn't be breached for 1,000 years. And Europeans all of a sudden cut off from their trade with Asia and India, which necessitates the sending of a man whose name is Christopher Columbus. He was an Italian from Genoa. Why Genoa? Because Genoa and Venice were the receiving ports for all of the goods that were coming in from India and China. So they were very good sailors. So the Genoese and Venetian sailors were the best sailors in Europe, because they constantly took the route from Constantinople to their two cities. And then from Venice, the goods moved to Central Europe and Eastern Europe, and from Genoa the goods moved to Western Europe, like France, Spain, Portugal, and England. So that was the division of the two ports and why they were so important. And of course, a sailor who was from Genoa was very experienced. That's why Christopher Columbus was the one who went searching for a new route to India because Europe needed the trade. And without that trade, they were just not as economically viable as was the trade. And the consequence of his sailing was stunning. Yeah, just these colonial expansions of European powers and the colonial empires of Spain and Portugal and Holland to begin with, and then later on the expansion to English and French colonial empires, and then much later German and Italian colonial empires. For Russia, it was a wake-up call to gain their independence from the Mongols, from the Golden Horde, and it's amazing. So 1453 is the taking of Constantinople. 1480, Moscow is freed from Mongol rule. And so then, because of the weakening of the Mongol Empire, because of the expansion of the Ottoman Empire, Russia starts taking over Mongol territories to the east of the Ural Mountains and becomes a continental empire as well. So the consequence of taking of the Constantinople is still felt by us today. I mean, it's amazing. We speak English on the North American continent partly because of the Turks taking Constantinople in 1453. It's remarkable. It's like the one date that I feel is the most consequential date in history. So Mátyás is the king of Hungary at the time when Constantinople is already Turkish. And he keeps fighting and engaging the Turks. During his reign, they do take Belgrade and they take parts of Croatia. And he realizes that the Holy Roman Emperor, who is also fighting him from the West, is not going to be helpful, and Hungary will just have to succumb to whatever comes from the East. So oh, it's not from the east, but from the south. I said the east because the Turks also came from Asia, but instead of taking the northern route through what is today Russia, they took the southern route, and that's why there are Turkic speaking countries in like Central Asia, like Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan are two countries that speak a Turkic language, and they were settled by people who are moving from the east through the southern route. And then eventually the majority of them settled in what is today Turkey. But then the Ottoman Empire expanded to take over the entirety of what used to be the Byzantine Empire, from North Africa to the Middle East, to the entirety of the Balkans and Greece and Hungary. So Mátyás Király, he instituted a bunch of law reforms that made Hungary a functional kingdom, despite the fact that they had so many enemies all the time externally. And like my Hungarian great-grandmother used to say, eltűnt, Mátyás eltűnt az igazság, Mátyás disappeared, and so did justice. And it's a very common Hungarian saying that with him, like everything was lost. This is the map of Europe at the time of King Mátyás. So the yellow spot is Hungary. It's like an enormous country at the time when Europe was not all that united. And you can see the expansion of Ottoman Turkey northward. King Mátyás is still so important to the psyche of Hungarians today that his image on the 1,000 foreign banknote. And this is my favorite fountain. So it's a hunting fountain, and the sculptor of the fountain is the same sculptor who created the sculpture of St. Stephen on the Buda Castle. And there he is, King Mátyás at the hunt. It's an amazing fountain. It's great to see in the morning, during the day, at night. The illumination is fantastic. It's very, very impressive. And so the Ottoman Empire kept moving up further and further north. So you can see Belgrade. It was taken by the Turks. It's right on the Danube, and then the Danube takes a sharp turn north. Right before the city of Page, and you can see the city of Mohács. That is where that battle happened. And my mom, on the first anniversary of my dad's death, my mom and I didn't know what to do. We just sort of, went to the cemetery, and it was so sad. And then on the second anniversary, we figured out what we must do. Every single year on the anniversary of his death, we decided to go and do something historical. So So this past year, we actually went to Mohács and we toured the battlefield where the Hungarians lost their independence in 1526. We talked to the museum associates, and they are completely redoing everything. I mean, they are preparing for the 500th anniversary next year. So new museum will open and it will be interactive. It's remarkable. Just walking through this field, and then you can see that from Mohács, the Turks just followed the Danube all the way up to Buda and took over the city. So this was the extent of Turkish holdings in Europe. And the Republic of Venice was holding on for dear life. And it's fascinating, the Republic of Venice fought the Turks in many leagues that they formed, was like papal states and the Holy Roman Empire. And one of those battles, I wrote about it, it was the Battle of Lepanto, which was not far away from Missolonghi, where Byron died fighting the Turks. So everything is connected. And at the Battle of Missolonghi, which was at the Battle of Lepanto, which was organized by the Republic of Venice, one of the soldiers who fought in that battle was Miguel de Cervantes, the future writer of Don Quixote. So everything is truly connected. Like the Turkish history of Europe is absolutely fascinating, and I can't recommend enough just the importance of it and the importance of to study it. This painting, I haven't commented on it yet. It's not because I need to do too much research on it. It's because I know too much about it. I visited this castle. It's called the Eger Castle. And when all of the male defenders of the castle died, women, you see the main figure of the painting is a woman who is holding her dying husband's hand. And she is holding his hand because he is literally falling at her feet, and she just took the saber out of his hand. So she's letting go of his hand. She's holding the saber in her right hand. If you see the details of the painting, all the fighters in this painting at this point are women because all of the men are dead. And you can see an older woman and a younger woman holding a basket of stones, and they're throwing them at the Turks who are coming at the castle. This castle was never rebuilt. It remains as a ruin today in the memory. Everyone in the Eger Castle was slaughtered. It's way to the east of Budapest. And my mom and I visited this castle 2 years ago, once again, commemorating my dad and his interest in history. But walking through this castle, I mean, you can still see the grounds. It is catastrophic. And just every single person died. But when all the men fell, the women picked up the swords and fought with you can see women in the background fighting with torches. So, and there's a wonderful novel written about the defense of the castle of Eger. It's called Egri Csillagok, The Stars of Eger. And if you want to read the most superbly sad novel, it's it's that. It's about the defense of Eger. And the man who came to Hungary is this guy, Suleiman the Magnificent. And I'm so cheerful about him because I've studied so much about him. He truly was magnificent. There's a Turkish TV series that is called Magnificent Century that has, I don't know, like over 100 episodes. And it is a minute TV series with all of the excitement that a TV series can generate. Just a fictionalized history of his reign. So he was the one who invaded Hungary. And remarkably, he died in Hungary in 1566. So he's the longest reigning Turkish sultan. And just the brilliance of his court, the genius of his rule cannot be described. But to expand that far north, you had to be a very, very good military commander, which Suleiman was. And this is the last battle that Suleiman participated in. It's the Battle of Szigetvár. And these are the two monuments on the spot where the battle happened. So one of them is Suleiman the Magnificent, who died of old age during the battle. He was 72, and he died on the territory of Hungary. And then, of course, Zrínyi Miklós was the Hungarian-Croatian defender of the castle of Szigetvár. And you can see him doing what the 300 did at Thermopylae. He rode out of the castle in full battle glory on his war horse, saber drawn, and was cut down. I mean, it was a suicide mission, and the city was finally taken. So when the statue of Suleiman the Magnificent was erected on the spot, Hungarians had an issue with that because they wanted to show that Hungarians fought on this spot too. And so a couple of 3 years later, the statue of Zrini Miklós was added. And I'm just so pleased that they are not confronting each other, but sitting next to each other. And of course, I went here with my dad. Can you imagine the lecture on the way there, on the way back, and while we were there? It was a miserably cold, rainy day in November. And I mean, he had a lot to say, and we had to experience the whole thing. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And so this is actually the most northern location for a Muslim pilgrimage in the world. And this is the entirety of the complex of the grave of Gül Baba, who was a Sufi mystic, and he was the one who came to Buddha with Suleiman the Magnificent, started a school, and he's buried, it's called a turbe, a tomb, right in that octagonal building in the middle of the complex. And this is what it looks like. So this is the most northern pilgrimage for Muslims in the world, which is remarkable. And it's in Europe, and it's in Budapest. And it has a beautiful rose garden right next to it. So just an absolutely amazing place to enjoy. I've been there in the afternoon. I've been there in the evening. Just lovely, absolutely lovely. This is the grave of the last governor of the Buddha Castle, and his name was Abdul Rahman. And he happens to be like right on top of the Buddha Castle defense wall. This is my favorite sidewalk in the world. So every time I come to Budapest, I go for a walk here. And that particular day, there was a young man standing next to it. Just modern clothes, very, very nicely dressed, very, very cosmopolitan. And I walked over to the grave and I said, hello. And he said, hello. And I said, oh, I just wanted to say hello to my friend Abdul Rahman. And he said, why is he your friend? And I said, I come to say hello to him every time I go for a walk. And he said, what do you know about him? And I said, he was the last a Muslim Turkish governor of the Buddha Castle during the Habsburg Wars. And he was just so taken aback. And then, and he said, like, what do you know about Turkish Hungary? And so needless to say, a very long conversation ensued. And when I just said, could you take my picture because I'm always here alone? And he said, of course. And then I said, well, nice chatting to you. I need to keep walking my dog. And he said, okay, goodbye. And he just stayed there to pray. He came to Hungary from Turkey on a pilgrimage to Hungary's Islamic sites. And he was just really bewildered by this woman with an orange purse and a dog who really wanted to talk about Suleiman the Magnificent. So it was fun. It was very fun. And then this is the city of Pécs, and you see the great mosque of Pécs that was turned into a Catholic church after the liberation of Hungary, and the statue right there. The man on the horse is, of course, our defender of Belgrade. Oh God, what is his name? Hunyadi János, that's it. So I planted myself on my rear end while running in front of that statue because it was raining and the sidewalk was slippery. So never run by statues in the rain. That is my advice to us all. So this is my favorite place to enjoy Turkish history in Budapest. This is the Rudas bath. And on the wall of this octagonal pool, it says that it was built in 1566. It's open every day, filled with tourists. It's just absolutely an amazing experience. And then on the four sides of the octagonal pool, there's a super cold pool, super hot pool, and two in-between pools. But the middle pool's temperature is amazing. And you have to understand that all of these pools are thermal, so they don't have to be heated. They just, plug into what that's why Budapest originated where it is located today. It was the place of waters, Aquincum, the place of waters. The Romans loved it so much because it had thermal springs. And Budapest has dozens of baths. All right. So then came the Habsburgs. Oh, that's my Watson barking. I think he can hear the deer walking through the yard. So the Turks were defeated in Budapest by the Austrians. And this painting is enormous. It's this huge painting of Eugene of Savoy riding into the Buddha Castle with the Turks defeated. We are in the late 17th century. and Buda is finally free. And then the liberation of Hungary was undertaken by Austrian Habsburgs, who rode in on their gorgeous white horses and never left. So we are getting very close to 1848. The statue of Eugene of Savoy is right in front of the Buda Castle main building, and this painting is in the museum that is housed in this building. This is a very touching angel with the Hungarian Apostolic Cross on the site on the Buda Castle where there was the heaviest fighting when the Austrians got the Turks out of the castle. And Maria Theresa became the Empress of Hungary in the 18th century. So all of these photos, I took them in the Hungarian History Museum in Budapest, a wonderful, wonderful museum. So Maria Theresa became the Empress of Hungary, and Hungary became a part of Austria, right? And then her son, Joseph, who was the patron of Mozart, so this is getting us closer to our historical period, was the Emperor of Hungary. And then Francis, who was defeated by Napoleon, you knew I will use Napoleon at one point in my talk. So he was defeated by Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz. So the Russians and the Austrians were allies at the Battle of Austerlitz, which today is in Czech Republic. The location is called Slavkov u Brna, and that's the battle that is described at the end of Volume 1 of War and Peace, which I'm teaching to my University of Iowa students right now. So exciting. So Hungarians were on the front lines of Austrian fighting against Napoleonic France. And when finally Napoleonic France was defeated in 1815, Hungarians assumed that they're going to gain their freedom from Austria, but it didn't happen. And thus, what we are reading about with Jókai Mór is the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, where the anger and the frustration boiled over to the extent where Hungarians stormed the Buda Castle. This painting, I was so thrilled when I found this painting. This is the storming by the Hungarian revolutionaries of the Buda Castle that is now filled with Austrians, the same Austrians who got the Turks out of the Buda Castle. And this location is exactly where the sidewalk is, where I love to walk with Watson. So it just like the peaceful nature of that sidewalk is just such a delight because you're so far above the city. The noise of the city is so far below. But the person who is cognizant of the history of what happened here is just constantly amazed that this peaceful place was the site of so much ferocious fighting. And so the revolution started on the steps of this museum. And of course, the sculptor of the Aranyano statue in front of the museum is the same sculptor who created the Mátyás fountain on the Buda, at the Buda Castle, and the St. Stephen's statue by the Fisherman's Bastion. This is the spot. This is the spot where the revolution of 1848 started, with this young man, Petőfi Sándor, reciting his fiery poem. And it happened on March 15th, and Hungarians still recite that poem on the spot on March 15th. Every year, they celebrate that as their Independence Day. So independence of Hungary begins in 1848 on March 15th with Petőfi Sándor reciting a poem called National Song, Nemzeti Dal, and the first line is Talpra magyar hív a haza. On your feet, Hungarians, the motherland is calling. And there's a statue to him next to the Museum of Petőfi Sándor in Budapest. Lots of information dedicated to him in this museum right here, the National Museum. And this was the uniform of a Hungarian revolutionary, so you can see that the cross-braiding of my Hungarian jacket is so important because that was the uniform of Hungarians who fought for their independence in the Revolution of 1848, 1849. Széchenyi István was a moderate revolutionary. He felt that if Hungarians demand for their full independence from Austria in 1848, it will end in disaster. And he withdrew from politics because the more radical politicians won. And of course, his words proved to be prophetic. So Széchenyi István was the moderate revolutionary. The bridge that you are looking at right now, the chain bridge, was named after him. So it's called the Széchenyi chain bridge. And then Batthyány became the first prime minister of independent Hungary, and he was the one who was shot by a firing squad. So this is his mausoleum at the cemetery where my dad is buried. So Batthyány is the first prime minister of Hungary who was killed by the Austrians. And then here we have Kossuth Lajos. So Kossuth Lajos was the first regent president of Hungary. He tried to play both sides. He called himself regent to please the royalists, and he called himself president to please the revolutionaries. And then, of course, when the revolution was defeated by the combined forces of Austria, Hungary, and Russia, the Habsburgs called the Romanovs in to help put down the uprising. And this is the connection to Dostoevsky, right? Because Dostoevsky, at the same time, is a member of a revolutionary group called Petrashevsky Circle, and Nicholas I arrests them. They are sentenced to death by firing squad, an incident that we will be reading about in the novel The Idiot, which we are covering next fall. And then Dostoevsky is sent instead to Siberia to do hard labor. So that is the same Nicholas I who feared revolution at home and helped the Habsburgs to suppress their revolution so that it wouldn't spread eastward. And here is the stunning portrait of Kossuth Lajos. And here is the statue of Kossuth Lajos in Algona, Iowa, which is the capital of Kossuth County. In English, they call it Kossuth. And so, yes, the largest county in Iowa. And this is the mausoleum of Kossuth Lajos. I keep posting these images because they're so spectacular. I mean, that is his sarcophagus, and this is the entire complex. It is beyond unimaginable. So Hungarians really appreciate what he has done for Hungary, which is alert the world to the fact that this wonderful nation exists in Central Europe that deserves its independence. And so all of these revolutionaries who failed in 1848, like Jókai Mór, who fought on the barricades and was suicidal afterwards because all of his friends died, they decided, we failed politically, we failed militarily, but we are going to create a culture that is so unique and so spectacular that the world cannot deny this culture nationhood. Isn't that an amazing project? And so Kossuth Lajos actually took the crown with him and buried it somewhere in Transylvania. It was found later. So Kossuth Lajos did not even want the Austrians to have the crown of Hungary. And Hungarians realized that they are not going to gain their independence on the battlefield. They're going to become culturally so Hungarian that Hungarian will become an interesting, superb way to promote their language, their culture. And so Hungarian aristocrats started ordering these spectacular and very sexy looking Hungarian outfits, and for both men and women, with the cross braiding. So look at this spectacular dress. I mean, I totally would wear this dress every day. It is just absolutely amazing. So Hungarian aristocracy adopted the Hungarian national outfit as a sign of their promotion of their own culture. And there's my jacket after I purchased it in Budapest. It's funny because the atelier owner said, "So when are you coming for your next jacket?" I'm like, "I'm good. I just need one. This is plenty." And she said, "You'll be back. You'll want the Michael Jackson." And she calls the gold cross braiding jacket the Michael Jackson jacket. It's just a very, very enticing idea. The porcelain heron, and I have my example of heron porcelain right here, started making, so this is the Gödöllő pattern, and it was made for Empress Sissi of Austria, and we'll talk more about her as we are progressing through the Jókai Mór novels, who became a champion of Hungarian independence. So in the 1860s, Austrian Empire became the Empire of Austro-Hungary because they finally got a right to have their own parliament sit in Budapest. And so this porcelain was made by the Hungarian porcelain manufacturer Herend, and they named it after Empress Elizabeth's, the Austrian Empress's Hungarian palace at Gödöllő, because in gratitude for her promotion of the idea not necessarily Hungarian independence, but Hungarian autonomy within the Austrian Empire. So in the 1860s, it becomes Austro-Hungarian Empire, first step towards independence. And then this is the Apony pattern. The Apony were Hungarian aristocratic family. So they started ordering not Stavra, which is French porcelain, not Meissen, which is German porcelain, but Hungarian porcelain, and asking not Jolny, but Heron to create porcelain patterns with their names. To this day, the Apony aristocratic family's porcelain is available for purchase in Budapest. And then they took this porcelain to the 1851 World Expo in London, and it was so popular. Queen Victoria wanted to order a complete set for Buckingham Palace. To this day, this pattern is called the Victoria pattern. And to this day, this pattern is available for purchase. Do you see how Hungarian culture all of a sudden became internationally recognized? And guess who was Queen Victoria's favorite non-English European writer? Jókai Mór. Too bad we don't have a full translation of his great novel about the revolution. So here is Victoria pattern. Then, of course, as soon as Victoria purchased a whole set for Buckingham Palace, other wealthy British families wanted to have Hungarian porcelain. So this is the Rothschild bird pattern, because the Rothschild family, a super wealthy family in England, decided to order Hungarian porcelain for themselves. To this day, you can purchase the Rothschild bird Hungarian heron porcelain. Franz Liszt, I mentioned it in one of my comments. He was a cosmopolitan international superstar. Listomania was all the rage. Women were like literally tossing their diamonds on the stage when he was playing because he was so fiery. But he started writing his Hungarian rhapsodies right around the time of the Hungarian Revolution, before and after, in the spirit of the day, because he was all of a sudden feeling that he is not a cosmopolitan international kid, he's a Hungarian. And there he is with his international Playboy and Playgirl set. It was praying to the bust of Beethoven and a portrait of Lord Byron right above Franz Liszt's head. The other people in this portrait are Rossini, Paganini, Victor Hugo, Alexander Dumas, and Georges Sand. Amazing painting called The Romantic School. All right, and here's the Franz Liszt Music Academy in Budapest. And this is the grand hall of the Franz Liszt Music Academy. Those of you who have seen the film Maria with Angelina Jolie about Maria Callas, the entire scene where she comes to sing with piano accompaniment was shot on that stage. Then we have Erkel Ferenc, who became Hungary's national opera composer. So I gave a link to two of his compositions, the aria about my homeland from his opera Bankban, and then he is the composer of Hungary's national anthem. So all of a sudden, I mean, Hungarian composers start writing Hungarian music or music on Hungarian subjects. It was so important for them. It was not international cosmopolitan anymore. It focused exclusively on Hungarian history and Hungarian culture. And there's his statue of Erkel Ferenc. The other statue in front of the Opera House is of Franz Liszt. And here is his tomb, also in the same cemetery where everyone is buried in Budapest. And the modern wing of the Hungarian Opera Budapest, of the Hungarian National Opera in Budapest is called the Erkel Theater. So this is the modern opera theater. This is the stage of Hungarian National Opera. It is unbelievable. So I saw his Bankban at this theater, and Hungarians sing along and clap in the middle of the opera because that song was performed. And it's called Hazám, Hazám, my motherland, my motherland. And like all the yearning of Hungarians to have a motherland was infused into that song, which was written in the 19th century when Hungarians were demanding their independence. More Budapest National Opera, more Budapest National Opera. It's stunning. And the ceiling. All right, and that this is a photograph from the main balcony of the Hungarian National Opera. Stunning. This is, of course, Munkácsy Mihály, and he was this suave, cosmopolitan, sophisticated painter. Of course, he's buried in the same cemetery. he was like so suave and European. Look at him. And he painted these incredible scenes of wealthy ladies arranging flowers in very sophisticated um, settings. This is the painting that he added to the grand staircase of the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, ordered by the Habsburgs, right? Do you remember our reading of Paradise Lost? He is the one who painted the painting of Milton dictating Paradise Lost to his daughters. But look what he also did. He painted Hungarian peasants, and all of these paintings at the Budapest National Gallery. He painted Hungarian genre paintings. He painted this amazing painting of an old woman and a little girl churning butter. And then this is his most famous painting, a peasant boy yawning. It is so amazing. It is just so like thrilling to see these paintings of unnamed Hungarians living in the countryside that became so important for all of these artists to bring into the forefront of cultural life. And then we get to Jókai Mór. So here is his spectacular secession style or Art Nouveau tomb complex at the Kerepesi Cemetery, his statue on Andrássy Street. The statue is about 2 blocks from the Opera House. And his home, which is in Komárno, Slovakia, across the Danube from Hungary. But it used to be a part of Hungary when he was born there. And my mom said they just finished restoring the museum because when my mom and I were there last summer, the museum was closed for restoration. Can you imagine the party that will be happening here a week from today on February 18th? They are going to party hard because that is his 200th birthday. And here's the Danube, separated into Hungarian side and the Slovak side. So in the middle of the river is the border. And the town is divided into the Hungarian side and the Slovak side. And the house where Jókai Mór was born is now on the Slovak side. And this is a beautiful view of Lake Balaton. We are running a little bit late, but I'm almost done. And this is where Jókai Mór had his summer villa, where he wrote most of his novels. And so he became spectacularly successful. He wrote something like 80 novels. So very much though the same prolific nature as Charles Dickens or Balzac or Leo Tolstoy. And do you see there's like a poster of a dog behind Watson? They actually encourage you to come with dogs. And I love this. This is before the tour. This is after the tour. It's like, Mom, this is boring. Because Jókai Mór loved dogs. And so they have like this very, very powerful dog-friendly culture at that museum. Do you see his writing jacket? It has the Hungarian cross braiding on it. So it's just like sitting there on his chair. And this is my mom for my Saint's Day, which is July 26th, St. Anna Day. She found an old lady who wanted to get rid of her collected set of Jókai Mór in 60 volumes. So she gave it to me. And her neighbors were saying, why does she need like all of these books that take up 2 suitcases to transport? And she said, just you wait. And so then she asked her neighbors, did you hear the screaming? That was my daughter after she received her birthday, her not birthday, but Saint's Day present. So spectacular gift. And this is my mom, and that is my favorite cake. So it's called Dobos Torta, and you can enjoy it in any cafe anywhere in Budapest. And then another view of very Hungarian food. It's Tokaj wine, which we are going to be consuming next week. It's actually Tokaj Furmint, which comes from the east of Hungary, right around the area of that castle that was taken by the Turks, which was defended by the women of Eger. So it's in that region of Hungary in the east. And on the plate, there's an entire goose liver because it's a very, very, very poultry loving cuisine. So it's not the goose liver pate. It's the entire goose liver, and it's just like a burst of explosion in your mouth. That's pretty much my favorite Hungarian meal. And the dumplings in the little bowl, that's my dessert. It's sweet cottage cheese dumplings. So good. And more of beautiful Budapest, the Mátyás Church, Fisherman's Bastion, newly opened building right next to the Mátyás Church, and that's Mátyás Church from the front on the Buda Castle. St. Stephen on a full moon night. There are so many full moons. They I mean, it's amazing. They happen every 28 days. I just always hike up to the castle and I keep taking all these pictures. I have probably like 15 photos of the statue on a full moon night. It's amazing. And then, of course, you can see the Matash fountain and the complex into which it is embedded. So you can see the fountain, and above it is the main cupola of the National Gallery, where all of these amazing paintings are, like all of the Munkachi paintings are in this building. And then the red, white, and green Hungarian national flag colors projected onto the Fisherman's Bastion just before August 20th, which is Foundation Day, St. Stephen's Day. All right, so that's my last image. Stop share. So sorry, I went way overboard, but yay. Were you able to see everything and hear everything? Fabulous. And maybe I'll do my show and tell now, because so here is my Victoria pattern Hungarian heron porcelain, and this is the one that won first prize in 1851 in London, just after the revolution, right? I mean, like, the porcelain manufacturers they got the memo. We're going to start making porcelain that everyone wants in the world. And so Victoria ordered the whole set for the Buckingham Palace. They call the pattern to this day Victoria. And then the Rothschilds did not want to be left behind. And then this incredible, like, porcelain, it's from, so this is Herend, this is Zsolnay. And the Zsolnay porcelain manufacturers developed this this glaze called iozine. It's named after the goddess of the dawn, Io, and it looks like the dawn. It's like this pearl colored glaze that is absolutely remarkable. It's green. And so they make all kinds of things out of that. So this is the second Hungarian porcelain manufacturer. And then the third one is Holoháza. And I have this nice little set of Hungarian peasant girl and Hungarian peasant boy. And look at that. Oh, like playing with dollies. So here they are. So this is Holoháza. And this is located just north of the Tokaj region in Hungary, on the border with Slovakia. And then here is, I mean, this is like, oh, so heavy. But this is a lithograph of Budapest. And I'll just do this. And I hold it there. This is a lithograph of Budapest before there is a bridge across the Danube. So it's from the 18th century. And these are very, very hard to find. So you can just imagine how much I screamed for joy when I found one in an antique bookstore. And so I'll just do a close-up one more time. There's too much glare because yeah, there we go. That's better. So you can see there's only a pontoon bridge across the river, and there's no permanent bridge yet, because you needed basically steel technology to evolve to be able to bridge the Danube, because it's very swift, very wide, and very deep between the Buda Castle and what used to be Pest. So technology didn't catch up with the complexities of the Danube in this area till the 19th century. So that's why that chain bridge is so important. It made Budapest possible. And then the third region of Budapest is called Óbuda, and that's the section where Aquincum used to be, the place of waters where the Romans had their big camp. It's amazing because I actually checked the location where Gladiator 1 begins, and it's right on the border between Hungary and Austria, just east of Vienna. So that is where they are confronting all of those very unpleasant tribes that they were trying to keep as far away from the Roman frontier as possible. And that's what we encounter Marcus Aurelius. So he rode out from Budapest and rode to the frontier, right on the border between Austria and Hungary. And if you are ever driving from Vienna to Budapest, you are going to be shocked because it's like 30 minutes to the border with Hungary. Austria is a very long country. I mean, it borders like Bavaria in the west, but it is such a long country, and Vienna is so far east that it's a 30-minute drive to the Hungarian border. So any questions? Sorry, I just went on and on and on. This is my one chance. Cross. Oh yes, because it is a Byzantine crown. So it was given by the emperors of Byzantium to the kings of Hungary, and both were Christian. And it's fascinating that Byzantium was Eastern Christian. Hungary chose Western Christianity, which is Roman Christianity. But one of those enigmatic facts about Hungarian culture, this nation that is like constantly fluctuating between East and West, it has for its symbol a Byzantine crown, which is a crown gifted to Hungarian kings by the Eastern Roman emperors from Byzantium. And Hungary still uses the apostolic cross, which is like the cross that the Russians use, that has not just one crossbar, but two crossbars. Just, it's a country that is just between East and West, and it's smack in the middle of Europe, but it doesn't speak a European language. Hungarian is an Ugric language, and it's similar to Finnish. But I've been to Finland. I don't understand a word in Finnish, but there are just certain things about the two languages, like they don't have genders. You should question people. Oh, yes. I should restate the question. So somebody asked in a question, why is there a cross on top of the Hungarian crown? And I just explained that. And then the next message that came is asking to reread the question. So thank you for that. So yes, Hungarian and Finnish don't have a gender in their language, which is so thrilling. So that's what I tried to explain. So Russian, every noun in Russian and every noun in German is gendered. So in Russian, a desk is a he, and a wall is a she, and a window is an it. And then you have to adjust adjectives and verbs to add feminine, masculine, and neutral suffixes to go along with what you're describing. It's a nightmare. I have no idea why students want to study Russian. I mean, it's like a different alphabet based on Greek letters and all of those gendered nouns. And it's so complicated and too many letters, way too many letters. Hungarian doesn't, it's not like English where you don't have gendered nouns, but you have gendered pronouns. So you have he, she, and it in English. Hungarian doesn't even have gendered pronouns. It just has an O with an umlaut. It's third person singular neutral. And so a boy is an and a girl is an Translating must be very, very complicated from Hungarian because there's absolutely zero gender in nouns or pronouns. And then Hungarian language is, of course, Latin alphabet-based language, unlike Russian, which is based on the Greek alphabet. That's the difference between the lettering. Hungary went with Roman Catholicism, Latin alphabet, but kept a language that came from Asia. And so complicated. And just there's no connection between Hungarian or Polish or Russian or German or French or Italian or Spanish or Romanian. It's amazing. This country was literally founded by the Magyar tribes that came from Asia and brought their Magyar language, which this nation of 10 million still speaks. And remarkably, a tiny little nation of 10 million created a culture that was internationally recognized. So that is the legacy of 1848. They felt that enough is enough. We want our independence. If we can't win it by sword and by votes, we are going to write novels, we'll write music, we'll create porcelain, we will paint paintings, we'll create sculptures that will win the Grand Prix at the Paris World Expo in 1900. It just blows your mind. It's just like porcelain wins the Grand Prix in London. Statue complex to a Hungarian king called Mátyás wins the Grand Prix in Paris. So this culture was an explosion to the point where someone like Johann Brahms comes to Budapest, hears these fiery melodies called the csárdas, and he writes his Hungarian dances as an homage to this culture that is so incredibly, incredibly powering. Have you ever taught Hungarian little history? No, this is my first time hyperventilating about Hungarian culture. Can you imagine all of this information bottled up? And somebody who read my comment on 1453 is just bewildered. I mean, we were talking and just bewildered by the consequential nature of that date. And I said, can you imagine being me? I live with that weight all my life. um, Taking us to Hungary, yes, like tomorrow, today, because tomorrow we have snow. Yes, so yes, 1453 weighs on my shoulders every single day, just causing probably my headache, perpetual headache is caused by the fact that I just can't get over the historical significance of 1453, which just, I mean, if you think of everything that happened as a consequence of that, it's mind-boggling. But Hungarian culture, it's and I picked up snippets of this, when your parents take you to like important cemeteries or museums or historical sites, you go along, and my dad was a very fiery orator, just like Lajos Kossuth. I mean, Lajos Kossuth could give speeches for 3-4 hours. When he came to the United States, 1/3 of US population heard him speak between 1850 and 1851. 1/3 of the population of the United States. He traveled all the way to Springfield, Illinois to meet Lincoln, who was then in private law practice. And the two of them had a lovely conversation. And like the fieriness of Lajos Kossuth fighting for freedom definitely visited itself upon the fiery speeches of Abraham Lincoln. But the man was unstoppable. I mean, when he went to London, Queen Victoria was worried that he's going to cause a revolution in England. Um, the government that invited him the prime minister had to resign because it was causing so much tension in England. And they finally shipped him off to the US, where Americans were just more than happy to listen to Kossuth Lajos. Of course, he learned English in jail. The sweet young lady who claimed that she is his fiancée. And she was not. They never met. But she just believed in his cause so much that she started visiting him. And the only way they would let her visit him is if they were affianced. So she would ask him, like, what can I bring you? Not a file, no escape. But he said, books. I want to learn languages. Like, great way to spend your jail time is to learn a bunch of languages. And of course, there was a limitation on what she could bring him. So she could bring him the King James Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare. So can you imagine when Kossuth Lajos spoke in English, he sounded like a biblical prophet because his language was that of Shakespeare and the Stuart monarchs of England. I mean, to hear him speak, just 1/3 of the population of the US heard this fiery Hungarian speak in the biblical language of the King James Bible, just demanding freedom and recognition of the Hungarian cause. And of course, Kossuth Lajos, I think he died in the 1880s, so he never lived to Hungary gaining its independence from Austria, and he would have been devastated by the Trianon whiplash of the independence. So they gained the independence in 1918, then they lose half of their country in 1920. It must have been just such a shock. But it's fascinating that he wanted to fight against the Austrians. And who was fighting against the Austrians also in the 1860s was Italy. So he joined Garibaldi and his red shirt brigades to fight against Austrians in northern Italy. And guess I didn't add this, but there's a bust of Garibaldi in front of the Hungarian National Museum, right next to the spot where the revolution began in 1848, to honor Garibaldi, who became the battle companion of Kossuth Lajos. And Kossuth Lajos fought for the independence of Italy because it was a winnable cause at that point. And Italy, of course, gained its independence from Austria and became unified for the first time since the times of the Roman Empire in 1870. So there's no Italy between the fall of the Roman Empire. Thanks, Hans. And it's amazing how, there are these connections, the Hun conquest of, did Hungary lose Trianon Treaty as punishment? Yes. Hungary lost so much territory as punishment for being on the losing side in World War I. And the punitive damage that was done to Germany as a consequence of World War I resulted in the horrors of World War II. So World War II, in so many ways, was caused precisely by the complexity of the peace treaties that were written at the end of World War I. And of course, Hungary then joined Nazi Germany in World War II precisely because they lost all of that territory. And then Hungary was communist for 40 years after World War II. So extremely complicated history. But the fact that this nation is experiencing the first 35 continuous years of independence since 1526 is mind-boggling. Yes, so the few years between the war were complicated because they were in deep mourning over having millions of Hungarians stuck outside the borders of Hungary. But anyway, so the Roman Empire finally collapsed because these tribes from Asia come, the Huns, and they dislodge all of the Goths and Visigoths and Ostrogoths. And I mean, they have to travel all the way to North Africa to escape from the Huns. And eventually, all of this collision of tribes causes the collapse of the Roman Empire. And then a Hungarian named Kossuth Lajos goes to fight with Garibaldi in northern Italy, which results in the unification of Italy. So this is a great place to stop. There was a Hungarian connection to the collapse of the Roman Empire and a Hungarian connection to the resurgence of United Italy, which still is united. And the greatest force that fought against the unification of Italy at that time was the papacy, the papal states. That's why they never joined the United Italy. Vatican is the last tiny remnant of the papal states that were very, very powerful at the time, let's say, when Attila was knocking on the gates of Rome and the Pope said, "No, please don't." And he said, "Okay, well, fine, I'll go back to the Great Hungarian Plain." But I'm thrilled that you enjoyed the images of all the horses. I mean, to be there is just, I mean, there are these like gray Hungarian cows, and they look like the cows that roam today in India. And they came from Asia with the Magyars. And that incredible image of the wife of Arpad, who looks like so weary of the journey, and just this teenage bride drawn by these four incredible animals with her nomadic tent. She's moving to a new homeland in Europe to be the foremother of a new European nation. It just boggles the mind. Just absolutely, absolutely stunning. And Budapest is gorgeous. It's like so beautifully restored and fun, fun, fun. So spring break, yay, can't wait. Very good. Any other questions? Well, thank you for letting me hyperventilate. This will be posted. And if you thought that I'm get really excited about French literature and Russian literature, this is very exciting too. So we are not going to experience the complete Jókai Mór, the Stone-hearted Man's sons or Baron's sons. I have no idea how we're going to cope with this. We'll cope with this. You know, we're big kids. We're not going to throw a temper tantrum, but this gives me the idea that I perhaps should look into finding a translator who would translate this book in its entirety into English. So definitely adding it to the long list of my life projects, and we'll see it if it will happen. So yes, a few more comments on Hungarian history. We need to talk about the Turks. We need to talk about the Habsburgs. We need to talk about 1848. And then I'll post photos from Jókai Mór's birth town, post photos from his museum at Balatonfüred on the banks of Lake Balaton, beautiful town. And then we'll just do chapter 1, and when we get to the point where the chapters are missing or shorter, we'll improvise. We'll get to the very end, and luckily the Golden Age in Transylvania is complete. So in April we'll just have a much easier time. And Erdély aranykora, and we are going to go to the 16th century there, and then take May off, and then skip and a hop, and we'll be eased effortlessly into the French 16th century. Was the sequel to the Three Musketeers. So very good. All right. Have a wonderful evening, and then don't forget you have to get Hungarian wine by Tuesday next week, and you have the recipe. So I'm going to be making the Jókai Mór bean soup on Monday because remember, soup is always better the next day. So make it on Monday, celebrate on Tuesday. That's the plan. All right. Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.